I'm actually on my commute back from work. I was just up on the mountain in a meadow. I had to do a tally and a survey of how many plants were up there. So you can't really beat this, can you? Not too shabby. The wind was a little bit of a problem today. You had to watch overhead. There's a lot of dead oaks here because of the spongy moth, and you don't want to get whacked in the head. So this is just kind of a wander on the way back down, and I got distracted by the history of this beautiful area, so I wanted to share it with you, and a few plant IDs along the way. These are all tall blue lettuce. You can eat them. Of course, they're all gone to seed and expedited their maturity very quickly throughout the summer. But the reason for this is because, if you notice up in here, you see a lot of what looks like dead trees. Those are the oaks that were affected by the gypsy moth caterpillar, also known as spongy moth. So now we've got plants growing, especially this lettuce, and there's a bunch of sedges growing, and this is little blue stem. There's loads of that along the trail, and it's a wildflower extravaganza up there. There's the spent head of the tall blue lettuce. Now sometimes I've had it in my yard and it's gotten up to 6 feet, but up here they're still understory. They're still a pretty thick canopy, so they're not going to grow quite as tall as that as they would in a field. This is white snake root. There's lots of that along the trail too. What I'm walking on here is a handmade walking trail to the old Albrecht Jr. Poggenstacher estate, which he built on this mountain in 1905. And this was their view from the house and as they walked down the trail if they chose to do so. And this was the driveway in better days. Sorry about the bad resolution. It's tough to find pictures of these old estates, and this was about the best I could do. The history of this family is fascinating. Albrecht Jr.'s father, also named Albrecht, was one of the most influential American businessmen of the late 19th century, and he literally rose from rags to riches by bringing revolutionary technology to the American paper industry in 1866. Together with his cousins, they bought the rights to the Voltaire patent for making paper pulp from ground wood. Previous to this development, paper was made from rags. Voltaire developed his wood grinding machine in cooperation with Friedrich Keller in Germany. Keller's inspiration came from his observation of wasps that build their paper nests from partially chewed wood. The switch from rag to ground wood greatly increased the raw material available to produce pulp, reducing the cost by a factor of 7. The Poggenstachers went on to set up the first American ground wood pulp mill in Curtisville, Massachusetts, later named Interlaken, Massachusetts. Their first customer was Smith Paper Company. Other paper makers of the time ridiculed the idea of making paper from ground wood instead of rags, referring to the process as shoddy. For this reason, the Poggenstachers originally delivered ground wood pulp to Smith under the cover of night. Albrecht went on to build many pulp and paper mills throughout the northeast U.S. and Canada, including a mill in upstate New York. This Hudson River Mill near Luzerne, New York, eventually became a flagship mill of International Paper Company, which was incorporated in 1898. Albrecht met his bride Helene in Cornwall-on-Hudson. They went on to have 7 children, Albrecht being the oldest, and he was the one who built this beautiful estate. Because they spent a lot of time in this area, they fell in love with the mountain. And back during that time, if you had the money, why not? I would, wouldn't you? I'm always stopping to smell the roses. There's always something to learn in the plants. Sadly, in the late 1950s, the estate burned to the ground. Albrecht Jr. had become ill, his children weren't interested, and eventually the state had taken over. Today, this mountain is owned by New York State, or more specifically, the Palisades Interstate Park Commission. The trails are maintained by the New York-New Jersey Trail Conference, and there are many up here. It's not a large area, it's not a huge amount of acres, but a lot of people get lost. So before you come up, review your maps and make sure you know where you're going. Because if you ask me, I'm going to tell you I don't know. I'm just kidding. I'm always helping people out on the trail. I'm making note of this grapevine only because about maybe 20 years ago, for a long time, Macy's in New York City was sending out their workers to collect these vines from the woods in upstate New York to use in their windows and for their decorations around the store. And you didn't see too many. You noticed that they started to disappear. But this one, they missed, and it's growing at a pretty healthy state. I'm trying not to spin you around too much here, but it's always been my habit in my entire experience of hiking to always look behind you, because you never know what you might see. Usually I don't see anything, but as you're passing down through the woods, there's a lot that we don't notice. And a few times I've been able to turn around and see a few deer walk out behind me, a mink, a marten. You never know what's going to pop out. You never know what's hiding just at your feet. It's very interesting. This is an old road that leads to the back of the Partridge Estate, which was up the road a little bit. And the autumn-colored grass that you see growing in it is an invasive. It's Japanese stiltweed. And it shouldn't be here, but when it changes colors, it certainly is pretty. And here we see remnants of the past. Amongst the maple seedlings, this is periwinkle. And of course it's not supposed to be here, it's a plant that comes from Asia. And at one time it dominated this entire area, but the natural biodiversity of the forest has taken over and it's not quite as healthy as it used to be, which is how it's supposed to work. But it was planted by the Poggenstachers landscaper long ago. And this is what remains of the driveway that went up to the estate. It's about a mile long, and it's still in pretty good shape. It's had a couple of washouts up above. I'm down on the lower quarter portion of it before you get to the parking lot off the back road that leads to this park. Another habit I've developed in my many years of hiking is looking down over cliffs, because you never know what's walking through. For an approximately 119-year-old road, and considering all the traffic that it gets, it's doing pretty good. I tell you, our ancestors knew what they were doing. They were true craftsmen. we were having wind gusts up to about 20 miles an hour, and a lot of these decrepit oak trees that succumbed to the gypsy moth were starting to creak and crack, and that got my attention, so better safe than sorry. I hope you enjoyed this botanical/history walk, and I'll see you again soon in the next video. Thanks for watching.